Hi, y'all. I'm Trey Hall. Welcome to Spill the Spirituality, the new name for Hope and Anchor's weekly podcast. New name, but the same great goal of real conversation and loads of laughter. We just wanted a name that better describes what we're up to here for the millions and millions of new listeners who are yet to find us. We're on a weekly mission to explore the mysteries of our connection to each other, to ask the questions most podcasts leave unasked, and to explore our contact, or not, with whatever we call the higher power, the headquarters of the universe, God, the something more we might feel sometimes, even though we're not sure what we will do about it.
And I'm Jazz and Parfar. Look, pride and guilt, love and loneliness, sweet and salty, surely our lives are more than just binary. So whether you're interested in life after death or just maybe finding some life before death, we want this podcast to be inspiration, friendship, community, as you think about the next baby steps in your own spiritual journey, whatever that looks like.
Some celebrities leave us way before they should, sometimes at the peak of their powers. Amy Winehouse, Princess Di, James Dean on the cover of a magazine as Madonna sang about it in Vogue. Like Madonna, the woman played by our guest today is familiar enough to be known by her first name alone.
Yeah, when I say Marilyn, chances are you're picturing an iconic photograph, maybe the gravity-defying skirt from The 7-Year Itch.
Or perhaps a pout from the top-billed film actress and sex symbol of the 1950s and 60s.
That's madness. That sounds real. I'm freaking out.
We can't do Marilyn as a guest, obviously, but we can do the next best thing. The actress who's played her alongside greats like Naomi Campbell, Stephen Fry, Angelina Jolie, Marilyn Monroe's most reliable impersonator, Suzie Kennedy. Woo-hoo! Suzie, welcome.
Thank you, Everett. Do you want me to speak like this, or shall I speak in my South London accent?
I have to
better?
say Suzie Kennedy. Do both, whatever you want to. When I was listening to you online, it was so surreal to be watching. First, I watched one of your gigs, and you were doing Marilyn's voice, and then you were talking like as yourself, Suzie Kennedy, and I was like, to see Marilyn Monroe like with a British, like East London accent, was like my American brain was going, what is happening here? When did you become aware of Marilyn Monroe the first time?
This is about spirituality, right? This is a complete God-given divine intervention.
Okay.
Some people say I shouldn't be here, but I am. Someone put me here. The weird thing is my name being Kennedy. Right.
Yeah.
So,
It's I hadn't thought about that.
And then my middle name is Ellen, which was the character Marilyn Monroe was playing in her final film that she didn't complete because she passed away. Yeah. Right. Her character name was Ellen. That's my middle name. So strange. And I was born in America, and I was born on the West Coast. Like, there's all these little things, but Marilyn didn't enter my mind.
Yeah.
People think about these coincidences now, but not then. I loved make believe, and I went to dress vintage. And then somebody said, "You look like Marilyn Monroe." Now I knew who Marilyn Monroe was. I think we're all born knowing who she is.
Yeah.
I think she's like the angel that sends us down. She's like, what's the last image we have? But they told I could make money out of it. And then this guy stopped me and said, you could be a lookalike. You need to contact this agent. I went to this audition. I didn't know about auditions. What's auditions? I knew what they were, but I'm not going to get it. They said, just think of it as experience. Yeah. And they were like, wow, you really look like Marilyn Monroe. And I'm like, oh, thanks. And I got the job, but because they didn't expect me to get the job, I turned up and there's all these like Marilyn, like different versions of Marilyn, because nobody looks exactly like Marilyn Monroe except Marilyn Monroe. Even she looks different throughout. But there was like all these different versions of Marilyn. I was just like, this is crazy. And I got the job, but I didn't know. And I suddenly had this woman call me and was like, hi, could you give me your measurements? I'm like, who's this weirdo on my phone? And she's, you've got the TV commercial for After 8 Minutes. And I was like, nobody's told me this. So I called the agent. She said, I lost your number. I didn't expect you to get it. So I'm so glad you've called me.
Oh my gosh.
They want you. And there I was on set with Naomi Campbell and Stephen Fry. And Naomi Campbell's from South London, right?
She is, yeah.
So she's like a homegirl, right? So they were like, you can't talk to Naomi Campbell. And I thought, oh, I don't care, I'm never going to do this again. And she turned up and I was like, you're from Streatham, aren't you? She's like, yeah, I'm from Streatham. And she was so lovely. She was so lovely. She was 7 hours late, but she was lovely.
Yeah.
So I didn't know this. You didn't seek it out. It just happened to you.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So now this is what you do now.
Yeah.
Part of what you do. You don't only look like her though. you're not just a pretty face, though you are a pretty face. You're really funny. You're a comic and an actor as well. Marilyn. So I saw you online. You were performing and you were doing this comedy bit as Marilyn. And you have this kind of extended joke where you talk about Jerry Halliwell singing Happy Birthday to then Prince Charles for his 50th birthday. And you say, does anyone remember that? No one remembers that because no one cares.
I'm so sorry, Jerry.
Sorry, Jerry. You said you can't, and then you went on to say, you can't beat the original. I can't stand lookalikes. Now that is hilarious. But why do you care about her? It's one thing to fall into a commercial, right? You've got the advert job, but why do you care about her to bring her into life?
It's funny you should say about that bit because I never even wrote that down. I made that up because there was a guy that looked like Prince Harry. I know him in front row. And literally, I just remember Jerry Halliwell singing to Prince Charles. And I'm sorry she was the butt of the joke, but someone's got to be. And I just completely made it up. And that's my sort of humour.
Oh my God,
but I'm really protective because Marilyn Monroe has given me this amazing life. And my humour's quite dry and it's quite... I try and check myself a little bit. It puts me off doing comedy because I think, oh, that's a really cruel joke. And now I'm a terrible comedian because I'm like, oh, God, I can't say that. So it's really harming my act. But the one thing that I really feel protective of is the gift that has been given to me, bestowed on me. I've not done anything to deserve this. She did all the hard work and I'm reaping the rewards. That's what it feels like to me. I've travelled to places that I could never have dreamed of going to and I wouldn't have chosen to go to. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I'm not going to go off to Finland suddenly. Yeah. But I got to go to Finland and I loved it, but it's something I wouldn't have chosen. So I feel really blessed. Her life didn't turn out too well. And thanks to her, my life has turned out really well because it wouldn't have.
You're honouring someone and saying to someone, this magic, this beauty, which we can't have anymore, we can still love, we can still have, we can still celebrate.
I've done this because we're filming the podcast as well. I'll give you a bit of Marilyn because when people are scrolling to bring people to the podcast, in normal life, unless I'm being paid... I don't turn her on, and it really reminds me of the real Marilyn because she would say, do you want me to turn her on? And that's what it feels to be her. And it's I feel like that when I first started out, I loved it because there wasn't the internet when I first started out. It was like that young people don't know, the little dial-up.
For a while.
Get off the phone because we need to. So there wasn't social media. We were the celebrities. So sometimes you think, I'm going to put her on because I'm going to get some free meals in nightclubs and you did, and tables, and now everyone's practically famous. When I first got out of my abuse and trauma, I was looking like Marilyn. I was invited to all these parties and I would be so nervous that I would drink quite a lot, and I saw Phil Mitchell from EastEnders.
Love the Mitchell brothers.
We've gone from working with Jude Law. I've worked with Angelina Jolie, Ryan Gosling, all these people. But then I saw Phil Mitchell from EastEnders and I was like, oh my God, it's Phil Mitchell from EastEnders. I didn't even know his real name. And I just went up to him and I was like, you're Phil Mitchell from EastEnders. Like, he knows. And he was like, I know. And I was like, I love you. And he's like, I love you. And we sat together. Steve McFadden is his name, right? Yeah. And we just sat there at the Grosvenor House drinking. He was the nicest guy. I know I got excited about meeting Bobby Ball. I couldn't breathe.
We had Helen Lederer in the studio last month, and Jazz was all like, you were in a place.
It's just because it's like you say, it's that whole world of yours. So for me, Victoria Wood, when I was like 18, 19, 20, Victoria Wood, Helen Lederer, Rick Mill, that was my whole, I don't have to be trapped in who I am, I can be. So I equate her with a lot of realization and healing for me. Obviously she doesn't know, we've never met, so I've got this really one-sided relationship with the idea of who she is on stage, and to meet her in person it's just amazing.
That's the inner part of you.
There was a connection that I think I tried to explain to her, but she was very gracious, but she didn't get it. I haven't had the celebrity thing because I do describe myself as a pound shop Beyonce, and that comes from when I was at uni, I was the only brown person at the college I was at. There was one other actually, and we were constantly confused because we both had 2 eyes and 2 tits.
We're brown.
Yeah. But anyway, she left. You know your NUS card? Back in the day, it was like
Sorry?
laminated. It's like National Union of Students. It's like a
discount card.
Yeah. So back in the day, it was laminated, and you laminated.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
So I made friends with the guy who was making the cards, and then I put a picture of Naomi Campbell on my card because if I was going to be confused with any brown woman, it might as well be the most beautiful supermodel, and I never got stopped. I had that on there for 3 years and no one ever questioned
Didn't someone look at it and go, God, you look a bit rough in this picture? You look much better in real life.
would have been great.
I'd love that for you.
Oh my gosh.
I would have taken that. We all know those moving song lyrics from Elton John and Bernie Taupin about Marilyn, born Norma Jean Baker. And it seems to me you lived your life like a candle in the wind, never knowing who to cling to when the rain set in. Norma Jean had a fascinating but incredibly difficult life. Foster care. Oh, God, sorry. I'm fine.
You okay?
I am fine. Yeah,
it's
I'm
okay
good.
if you're not.
No, I'm good.
You don't have to get it together either.
Do you know? Because I've hurt my knee. Everything. It's just really funny because everything is, like you say, you can't do stuff, and so I feel like at a time when I couldn't do stuff and process stuff, and it just feels, I'm really sorry.
You know what? You don't have to be sorry. It's okay. And this is not going to be on the podcast. Don't worry.
No, I don't mind actually. I'm all about it's being real, and I've censored things that I don't need to censor. I'm not worried or embarrassed. I'm just, it's real.
I'd love to know what hit you then.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly what it is. I can tell you exactly what it is because I'm a speaker. So I travel the world and I do all these talks, and I've done over 3,000 keynotes, and I have never done a keynote where someone hasn't disclosed to me afterwards. And I speak to leaders and CEOs and all these powerful people, and they come up and you can see often they've never spoken about their abuse. So sitting next to you and knowing some of your story and knowing some of mine, there's something about that side of you that isn't your mind and isn't your body, that there is just a connection and a relief that I know that you understand things that I can't put into words, and I know you get it. And it's just rare to be on the other side of that, because usually I'm the one holding space and the other person is spilling or sharing. It just feels like a relief sometimes to know that it doesn't matter that you haven't got the words. There's someone just has done that journey. There's a connection. It's not I have an affinity with Marilyn, but that's that part of her story. It's always something that I felt really viscerally connected to.
People say to me, why do you think she's still famous? And they think it's the Kennedys. Of course it's that as well. But there's something in her story that connects with every single person. Because I don't know one person that's ever felt like, where do I belong? Who loves me? Where should I? Yeah. And I think they do cry, and she does make people release. I was in a church before I was a Christian, and I went in with my friend in Paris. He's a gay man and he believes in God, and he's had problems with his family due to this because they're Italian Catholics. And I went into this church, sat next to his friend Barbara, and I thought, I really don't want to be here. And suddenly, exactly what just happened to you, my breath went and I just started crying. And I was like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And he said, God's talking to you. I couldn't hear anything, but my body felt like someone had reached down and just was clearing out and was holding me. I wasn't a Christian. I didn't I knew something. I was like, God, you may not believe in him, but he believes in you, as all those little sayings. But it was exactly that impact I've just seen happen to you. That something happened to you where someone touched you and it moved you, and it was reading that has ignited something in you. And sometimes we don't know what caused it.
Yeah.
It's just spiritually.
You say that about the chest. I remember that when I was 16, something happening and it feeling like it was in this thing at school, and it felt like a hand. I don't talk about it because it sounds so weird, but it felt like a fist came into my chest, and it got level to the deep secret that I was so ashamed of, and then I was, for a minute I was terrified. Then it went past that, and the fingers opened, and it was good. I can't even describe it to make it make sense, but it
makes sense to you.
It makes sense to me.
Well,
it makes sense to me. And I just want to pause here and just maybe honor what's happening. And I think to draw some of this together, we're talking about you, Suzie, as someone who somehow is inhabited by Marilyn Monroe. We're talking about spirituality, and you described this experience in the church where something, you didn't know what to call it, inhabited you in the center of your chest. Jazz, this experience of something inhabiting you. And so this is whatever we want to call it. This is what's on just happening to human beings all over the place, you know?
I don't know how to explain it. I think it's really important that we don't have to make it make sense to others, because those who understand will get it. So however you're explaining it, there's no right or wrong, right? Like you were saying about right or wrong answers. There's no how your relationship to God or higher power, someone has. To me, I believe in Jesus, but whatever you have, I knew that something happened to me that day. And I remember a woman, she runs Mercy UK actually, Ariana. She said to me after, just to jump forward, because I got diagnosed with cancer, she said, I think God cured more than your cancer when he touched you. And I agree, because there's something that happens to you inside your heart that gets touched, that I heard you say, Jazz, in one of your talks, that you don't know where you get that strength from, but it's not human. It's not you. And you don't know where the words come from. It's not you. And like me making the jokes, sometimes I think someone up there makes the jokes, because I'm like, that was actually quite good. I'm not capable of that. Or getting up in the morning, or I gave up alcohol, and I loved alcohol. I don't know how that happened. It's a strength that you don't know, but it's also something that hits you emotionally that you can't even explain. But the way you explain it doesn't matter, as long as it makes sense to you, because someone's going to hear it.
I love that. I love that. We have so much to talk about today. God, I want Suzie as our third co-host.
You just need to live here. We were talking about Norma Jean having a difficult life with foster care, the trauma of abuse, addiction. You've just talked about cancer, having cancer as well. These are like huge things that can finish people. And yet for some is fertile ground for growth. How do you connect all of that, like emotionally, with Marilyn and yourself?
Well, it's strange you say it's fertile, because I'm infertile because of my cancer. So, you know, when people say, you're just so much like Marilyn Monroe, I always say to people, there's parts of it that I wish we weren't similar, and we both can't have children. And that's a big thing, especially being a Christian, because so much is talked about praying for fertility and the womb is bountiful. And that can be quite stressful for women. And I know it was for Marilyn. She felt less than. She could have everything, but she couldn't have a child. And I know her childhood was so damaged that I think for her having a child was like a rebirth. And that's the one thing she couldn't have. And now I can't have it. But I do think out of that darkness becomes light, because I wasn't meant to, and there's lots of kids that need homes, and you were talking about foster care. So I think if Marilyn Monroe had lived, she might have been a great foster mum, and that could have been her journey. So I think when you're, you know, something bad happens to you, it's easy to say, oh, it happens for a reason, and that can feel quite hard. You're like, I got abused for a reason. And it's not the abuse, it's what comes from it. And I think with me, I've got my head around the fact that everything that's happened to me was bad, but out of that I've got to look for, where has it brought me to? I have a different level of empathy. I have a different level of understanding. My heart was hurting when you were hurting. I don't know if I'd have had that if I'd not been through pain. I don't know.
It's like a level platform game, and you go to different levels.
I wanted to ask you more about your faith, and you've talked a little bit about it already. Folks who listen to the podcast will know that I'm a Christian as well, a pastor, and also someone who's in recovery from addiction. And there's a verse in an old Christian hymn that I love talking about pain, which is, O God, O joy that seekest me through pain, I cannot close my heart to you. I cannot close my heart to thee. O joy that seekest me in pain. And for me, that doesn't mean that God, for me, it doesn't mean that God sends me suffering in order to teach me something. But Lord knows, for lots of reasons, I have found myself in suffering through my drinking, through what was underneath my drinking, through all kinds of things. Welcome to being human. You don't have to be an alcoholic to experience suffering, right? Welcome to being human. But there was something about knowing that God was with me in that pain, was experiencing that pain with me. Not that God sent it to me, but that God was able to help me walk into it and walk through it, not try to walk around it. Now, I'm not a trauma expert. I'm not a therapist. And there's a difference between pain and trauma. I just want to name that. But for me, what's been spiritually healing and bringing me back into relationship with God has been addressing that stuff and being able to, because I know God's with me in it, that I can walk out of it. I couldn't do it by myself for so long. I tried to stop. And again, if you're listening and you're not a cocaine addict or an alcoholic or whatever it is, I couldn't do it by myself. I needed God. And for me, that's Jesus.
I agree.
And I was going to ask you, we have been spilling the spirituality already.
It's just the
and
new
it's
name
rich.
has made it happen.
I know it has. Maybe we're
moment.
having so we ask people how they describe their spirituality. You've already started talking about that. How would you talk about that?
I'm glad that you used that scripture, because one scripture for me, and you spoke about addiction, and I honour that too, because it's some people, they could never say that. They are in denial.
Yeah.
I know people around me that are like, no, I'm fine. And you're like, you drink a lot. Just what would it be like to not drink? Oh, I'm fine. And it hurts me because I know that person. I was that person. I was living as Marilyn. My show was called Living as Marilyn. And everyone looked at me and thought, she's got it all. It's like when Matthew Perry passed away, it broke my heart, but it said, people were like, why are you so sad about, he could have got the best rehab, he could have had money. They don't see it's something inside you so deep, and you're ashamed of it, and you're ashamed that people are thinking that. And they are thinking that, unfortunately. Some people have no empathy, and they're like, if I had that, I would do this.
Would you?
Good for you.
Yeah.
You haven't got that, so you can't really decide. Well, I had this, literally, any guy I wanted, I could get. Doesn't mean they're going to love you, they just want something from you. But any party, any drink, it was just like, it was just, I'll give you everything you want. But I was empty inside. I was just like, it was like they said, dry bones without life in them. You're existing, but you're dry bones. And then God came in this moment, and it literally gave me life. That killed and destroyed, which was happening to me. I didn't care if I died. I did jobs in places like, you're going there on your own. And I'm like, I won't say the countries, I don't want people to get upset, but they're like, that's a bit dangerous. I'm like, don't care. What's the worst that can happen to me? I die. The worst that can happen to me is I die. That's the value of my life. I didn't care. I'd put myself in situations. I didn't even think about dying, because who cares if I die? And now I'm like, oh, I think I better get home before it's a little bit dark. Because I value what God has rescued me from, because he must have been sitting there, his head in his hands, thinking, got to sort this out.
Me too. Thank you so much for sharing about that. And I just want to acknowledge that lots of us have our own stories of pain. And sometimes listening to this kind of deep, real conversation can be triggering, cause us to shudder, bring up stuff in us. So if this is you and you're listening today, you are not alone. If you need to talk to somebody, you can visit hubofhope.co.uk, the UK's leading mental health database, to help find support in your area. Or if you're experiencing something that makes you feel unsafe, distressed, or worried about your own mental health, you can call 111 in the UK at any time of day or night and choose option 2 for your local crisis service. I remember I never had like suicidal ideation when I was drinking, but I would sit on my balcony every night drinking too much and smoking too much. I wish life would speed up. I wish life would speed up. I wish life would get to its end quicker. This sense of, I wish life would be over, which it wasn't like active suicidal ideation, but it was wishing this life, which I felt so sad and isolated. And you talked about, it was like a hole, like scooped out inside, just like nothing. I didn't want to live like that any longer. And in the throes of that, you can just, the idea of this fullness of life, which I experience now, which is sometimes joy and rapture, and sometimes just arguing with my husband about who take the garbage out, right? That is good. It's like, like this normal, ordinary life is so good. When you're in the pit of, and it doesn't have to be addiction, but when you're in the pit of depression or sadness or feeling estranged or isolated, you almost feel like there's no way I can get out of this. There's no exit. But there is.
And it's interesting about the emptiness, because I used Marilyn Monroe as like a coat. And I think the reason why I feel such an empathy with Norma Jean, because I'm trying to separate the two, is because I feel that the coat of Marilyn helped me survive. I think the coat of Marilyn helped Norma Jean survive, because she was loved. She didn't feel love. She was loved as Norma Jean. She didn't feel value. She was valued as Marilyn Monroe. So it gave me everything, and it's like a false security, and it's a bit like, not to mention Matthew Perry again, but his friends, he's Chandler. So Chandler protects him from, it gives him money, it gives him everything that he needs, but there's still that person inside that's empty. His book's amazing, by the way, if no one's reading it. His book's amazing. It's really honest. And we can create a persona, which I have with Marilyn Monroe, but the difference is now, and why it's a healthier space, is now I know it's a persona. Now I'm like, oh, I can't wait to go home and have my Lush bath bombs and watch EastEnders. Back then I couldn't take the coat off. I had to go out as Marilyn. I couldn't be barefaced and have no makeup on, even for the postman, because they might think, oh, is she that Marilyn Monroe girl? She looks terrible. Because I had nothing but Marilyn Monroe. Nothing.
Sitting here with you now and knowing your story, it's always more exciting than meeting a film star or a celebrity or Marilyn. For me, is meeting someone who's had trauma, who's been abused sexually, especially as a woman, and who is now on the other side and on a journey of healing. That is exciting for me, because that's the highest form of human for me. So I'd love to hear, just personally and for the podcast, about what you feel you can share, what you've processed, that you feel you're able to speak to from a place of healed wounds, not open scars, about your own experience of trauma and abuse and the journey through that to where you are now.
Like you, I'm okay speaking about it, and I think that I have a lot of people afterwards, and I will tell you what it is. I have a lot of people come up to me afterwards. You saying that people come up to you, and a lot of young girls saying, I want to do what you're doing. I want to talk about things. But I would say, and I've said this to them, it took me 10 years to talk about my cancer, and it took me 17 years to talk about my abuse. Because what can happen with that is, and if you've studied trauma, you'll know that some people who have trauma, they tend to tell people very matter-of-factly what's happened to them.
Disassociated.
And it's like they're reading a menu. And it may feel healing for them, but if you're not in the right space, because you don't know how people judge you, I would say take care of yourself before you share your story of trauma. Share it with a counsellor, share it with a really good friend if you really need to talk about it, but be careful sharing it publicly. I really took my time with this, and I did a lot of healing before sharing, because we are in quite a cruel world, and you have to be careful what you share, because it is out there then. And I've come to a point where you'll know this, that 17 years is a long time to decide to share things. I was abused by, they were not married, but he was my stepfather. He came into my life when I was like 5 years old. And he was the only father I knew, because I was born in the United States and my dad had stayed in the United States, and I had no real care and affection. So this new man was like, wow, he's like a dad to me. And he was really nice. And when people talk about abusers, we talk about the nasty side, but we forget how it happens. It doesn't happen. A nasty person you wouldn't be abused by, because they become nasty people, but they actually start out as people you think are caring. They're the only person that cares about me. And then obviously abuse started. I'm not going to go into the graphic side of that, because I think you can use your imaginations. In reality, it's usually always worse. But you end up carrying this trauma because you think, I'm a bad person. I encourage this. And when it starts, like, I can't tell anybody. And now we talk more about mental health, but back, I'm nearly 50. We didn't speak about that. It wasn't on TV. There wasn't shows about it. And this went on until the point where it was so bad that I ended up staying with him, because my mum and him broke up, and he was like, if you go with your mum, she's going to send you back to America. She doesn't love you. You're going to be put in a foster home. If you stay with me, you're safe. And the strange thing is about abuse and sexual abuse is I can't remember much of it. I can remember the first time it happened and probably the odd sort of time when it was very violent, but the rest of it, I was somewhere else. And weirdly, I remember a poster of Jordan Knight from New Kids on the Block, because I would just look at his face and take myself, that's the era that I was in. But then I think what happened to me is when I got out of that abuse, I was 27 years old, and he tried to kill me one night. He tried to, because I said, I need to get out of this. And he said, if you ever leave, I will kill you. And he dug holes in the garden. And
oh my God.
And in the end, I thought, do you know what? I'd rather be dead, because I need to get out of here. So he did try, and then the police came, a friend called the police, and my life started anew. But nobody gave me counselling. Nobody gave me anything. I was straight back into work as Marilyn. She was my rescuer, because I never earned any money. He would take all the money that I earned from Marilyn. He would take all the money. And then obviously, only a few years later, I was diagnosed with cervical cancer. And from that moment, they were like, you're never going to have children. But there was that moment I was lying there, and because I was having internal radiotherapy, and I was lying there, and I just thought, I don't want to be here. I felt completely like I need to give up. I was in so much pain. Nobody was in the room with me because there was a two-way screen. If you have radiotherapy, they can't be in with you because it's radiation. So you're completely alone. And I had no drugs in me, and I'm lying there, and I just felt completely alone. And weirdly, I thought, well, this has just always been my life. I've always felt alone. And at that moment, someone put their hand on my shoulder and said, don't worry, I am with you and you're going to be all right. And I thought it was a nurse. And it just, all the pain went away. I felt completely wrapped up, and I was like, thank you so much, because I was completely reassured. It just felt like she'd put me in a duvet. And when I came out of the radiotherapy, I said, whoever that nurse was, can you just tell them thank you, because I was in such a bad place. I felt so alone, and they made me feel great. And they said there was nobody there. I felt them. I know them. And they didn't have a male voice or a female voice. It was just a voice. And they said, but we saw you talking. Now remember, there's no drugs involved, right? And I came out, I was like, Mum, I've met God. And she was like, well, it might have been your gran, it might have been your dad, because my dad was... And I said, look, no disrespect, wherever you are. I was like, they didn't care about me when I was alive. This was something supernatural. And I flirted with the fact that I thought it was... Because people would say, you're going to say it was Jesus because you're from the West and you went to a Christian school, you're going to think it's Jesus. So I did hold that lightly. I thought, well, I don't know what it is. And then I was sitting at home and I was watching Morgan Freeman going around the world looking at different religions, and he went to 9/11, the people that had been involved in 9/11, and there was an Indian guy there who worked in one of the towers, and his wife was pregnant and she worked in the other tower. And obviously the plane hit, and he was running down the stairs, and they said, you can't go this way or that way. And he got everyone together, not a Christian, got everyone together. And he said, I just held the hands, and I was like, God, if you're real, we're going to pray to you now. And he said at that moment, he felt God put his hand on his shoulder and say, don't worry, I'm with you and you're going to be okay. I nearly dropped my tea. I was like, that's what happened to me. That's what happened to me. This guy called his wife and he got out. She'd got out of the Twin Towers. They gave up everything, dedicated their life to Jesus, went back to India to rescue street kids. I called my mum. I said, I told you it was God. And I held the Jesus thing lightly. It was Jesus. And it changed my life. I said, Mum, I'm going on pilgrimage. And she's like, don't go crazy now. When you get to speak, they're like, don't go like the people on Oxford Street. Or like when you were growing up and they were like, you're all going to go to hell.
Televangelist kind of stuff. Yeah. Shaming person.
Yeah, you're studying. And I wasn't. I was really interested. I like to have facts. I like to read. And I wouldn't just go, yeah, that was it and it's real. I actually challenged myself to prove it wasn't real. Right. I did the opposite. I didn't want to blind faith. I just wanted to say, Jesus, if this is real. And I went to Israel, and my mum was like, you're actually going on this trip. It's going to be full of old people. I was like, I like old people. They're fine. And I got there, and it was like a sea of people. It looked like, what's that film when all the old people are waiting to go up to space? It was like that.
Like Cocoon.
Yeah,
yes, it was
exactly.
Cocoon,
and I was like, everyone here's got white hair, but I don't mean white hair like me in like a glamorous way. It was just like we're all going to die, so we might as well believe in Jesus because we're scared of dying. No disrespect, but it's a bit like when you get older, you go, there must be a Jesus.
This podcast, Spill the Spirituality, is about helping people, whether they identify as Christian or as Muslim or as not sure, just to take a step into exploring where they are experiencing God and encountering God. So I just love that you're sharing that with us today so beautifully, and it's spilling over to the podcast.
I mean, I get excited about it.
I can tell.
Because this is the weird thing, like people say to me, oh, what's the most famous person you've ever met? And I'm like, what's the best person you've ever met? That was it, like the best person you've ever met. And I always go, Jesus. Because there was never enough before I found my faith. There was never enough to fulfill me.
I read about you leading a show that you were in, leading them in prayer, and people, porn stars and drag queens all gathered together in this ritual. So there's something about you that's, personally speaking, Jesus is this savior, lover, friend, companion, God who is with all people, and especially those who have been abused and hurt and dispossessed, and helping them know that they are beloved.
I've got to comment on what you said about praying with porn stars and drag queens, because this is actually not an exaggeration. So that was when I was in Hollywood, and it was doing Women Behind Bars, and we had the number one gay porn star and a few of the RuPaul's Drag Race drag queens. And it was a Sunday, and I was like, I should be at church. So I was like, guys, I'm really sorry that it's Sunday, but it's important to me to pray. If you want to pray, stay. If you don't, go. And I asked the producer, they all went, let's pray.
Awesome.
And what was most amazing about that is it became a bit of a habit. And then backstage, I'd be like, who wants to pray? So many would. And then after that, there was a drag queen, RuPaul's Drag Race, called Chi Chi Devane.
Oh my God, that's my favourite drag queen of all time.
So he was in the show with me.
Yeah.
And he died shortly after we finished. But what was amazing is we would pray together. And I'm so glad you're praying with me, because it reminds me of back when I was younger in the Baptist church, and you've just brought it back to me. We never knew he was going to get ill, and he was ill all the time, but we never knew. It's only because healthcare, thank God for the NHS.
Thank God.
But so much so, because he didn't go because of insurance reasons, and when he went, it was too late. But when he did pass, I thought, I'm so glad you found your way back to publicly praying and just having that connection with God, because we can all get lost. And the door is always open, I think, to God.
She had that real journey on Drag Race. Her accent and everything, and she was always a bit of a cheap queen at the beginning as well. And on the journey, this is why I love Drag Race. It's a story about identity. It's a story about belonging. And went through this journey of becoming comfortable with who she was, and then left. She left there's like the lip sync at the end, with the most iconic lip sync that ever happened. There's just this, she had all these pearls on, and I can't remember the song she was singing right now, but there's a moment where she goes down on the floor, and just by accident, the pearls rip and go all over the stage. And it was just this moment of leaving everything on the stage. And then she sashayed away. We're not the only ones spilling the spirituality. We're forever curious about how our little show is touching you. Text our burner phone on 07387 041566. That's 07387 041566. Or you can find us all across the socials at Spill the Spirituality. We're waiting for you.
We are waiting for you, and we're interested in your spirituality too. However you describe your stories, your rituals, your doubts and beliefs, we're as fascinated by the questions you ask as the answers you give. And we want this podcast to be a space, a place, a community where you, alongside of us, can take a step deeper into that exploration. Whether that's at one of our live events or just walking to the shop with your earbuds in. We want to hear from you, and we want to learn from you, because we are explorers together, and every day really is a school day. And nobody has it all sorted, so we need each other.
I've got a friend who every time we go somewhere, she'll be like, we just pray for safety. And uses the word just too many times. That annoys me. Pray for safety and nothing happens. And I'm like, Christians die, because it's not like this is a magic salve that will keep everyone safe. I love how you're reconciling it and talking about it, because I think it is hard to you just then pinning reason or your own meaning on something.
I will say that it will show you. I always think he does show you. So like when people say don't pray for a parking space, that's so unchristian. There has been times when I was like, Jesus, I do 14 hours from Germany to England. I'm like, Jesus, just make sure I get to the Eurostar on time, and just make sure this is and I ask for a blessing, but it's God's will. And when it does happen, I do go, thank you, God, because I do believe that God will show you that he's with you. But when it doesn't go your way, I don't think you can go, because we are told not to expect that. That's why I'm not a big fan of the prosperity gospel. I think it can be really damaging, because people do feel like, what did I not work hard enough?
Say what prosperity gospel is.
So prosperity gospel is, if you love Jesus, you'll get rich, you'll have the great job, and
just like Jesus did.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very biblical.
Yes, it's so biblical. You'll bypass the cross and just really have a fabulous, easy life.
Yeah, it's not. And I'm just like, whenever I hear it, I'm a little bit cringe. I would say you will have a better life knowing Jesus, but you may not have more money in your bank. So you may not want to follow. If I created a church, it'd be like, you may not be rich. You may have health issues, but you will feel like someone's helping you, like how you were impacted. There will feel like someone does reach inside you and is with you, but he may not reach into your bank account and make it go up.
What a wonderfully ranging conversation we're having. I want to take it to a little bit of a different energy, if that's okay, and pull out one of our favorite games, actually our only game on Spill the Spirituality, which is called The Circle of Trust. Don't worry, Jazz, I've got it over here.
The Circle of Trust. That seems like a drinking game that I used to do back in the day.
Circle of trusting something that ain't going to sort you out. This is... put it over there so Marilyn... That is Susie. Oh. So this is...
Did you just call me Marilyn? I love that. Yes, suspend belief. Just Marilyn sitting over here.
Oh, gosh.
I'm going to spin a wheel of fortune.
So how this works, this is a wheel of fortune.
It's very similar.
To get the prosperity gospel, we've got the wheel of fortune.
That's right. It's a very cheap version, and there's no money to be won. That's the difference.
I always say we think about it like spiritual improv. This is our prompt. We're going to give you a chance to spin this Circle of Trust, Wheel of Fortune, and it will land on an idea, and you can use that idea and tell a story or ask a question of us or whatever you want to. If you don't like the
This is very improv-y.
Yeah. If you don't like the first spin, you do get a second spin. And if you can spin again if you don't want the first choice. But if you spin again, you have to take the next one.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Spin away. You have to give it a good, hefty, like a non... Oh, you got it.
That's good.
Fear.
Oh.
Ooh.
Do you want that one or do you want to spin again?
So is it going to be a story about fear?
Story, question?
Yeah.
Question? Yeah, it can be whatever you want.
Question. Do I give you the question?
Whatever you want. It's improv.
We have to tell you the truth.
Oh, what?
Do we?
God knows if you're telling the truth. So growing up, what was you scared of? Because this is really weird what I'm about to tell you what I was scared of. I was scared of Michael Jackson in Thriller.
Terrifying,
good reason.
And I ended up, and I used to put the settee in the middle of the room purely because Michael Jackson put his hand through the wall when she was sitting on the settee. So I was like, I don't want my settee against the wall. So I used to move it as a little kid. But weirdly, as life went on, strangely, I became by accident best friends with Michael Jackson's designer. And if you watch that, This Is It, his name's Michael Bush. And so I go to his house. I've got a key now to his house in the Hollywood Hills. Ooh. And I hung out with LaToya Jackson. So it's a little bit like God was like, I know you're scared of Michael Jackson, but now what do you think of him? Oh, he's fine now.
I'm not scared.
I've hung out with all his costumes and his family. So I'm like, yeah, I'm all good now. So you can overcome your fears.
There are lots of people who probably have reason to be scared of Michael Jackson.
There's that too. I've got a fear and I have not overcome this so much. Like when I used to be a teacher, and when you're with kids, the one thing you're told, like if you show fear, and that they're going to be scared. So I took a group of nursery kids out to a pet shop. And then we were standing there looking around in this pet shop. It's two things, my two fears. On the way to the pet shop, there was a Dalek, like in a bookstore, like a Doctor Who
Dalek, yeah.
Make no attempt to capture them. They are to be exterminated. You understand? Exterminated.
I can't, they're thinking about them now makes my heart go fast. I know they're not real, but, and it's not the new ones, but the old ones, but they were scary. Everyone hid behind the sofa for Daleks. So we passed this Dalek and I managed to keep it together, got into the pet store. We were standing having a talk by the owner. I'm by this glass case. I'm with nursery kids, they're quite small. I'm by this glass case, and it's all sorts in there, rabbits and mice and Lucas. I'm standing there and I turn to this case and I think, well, nothing in that. That's a bit of a waste of time. And then my eyes kind of focus. Oh, God. My eyes focus and it makes me feel sick. There's this huge, fat, white snake.
Fat, white what?
Oh, God.
You covered your mouth. Snake.
Just huge.
A fat, white one.
Whoa. Yeah. Just not what they called, like when they're
anacondas.
White. No, just white, pale.
Albino.
Oh, yes. Snake.
Albino snake.
And in the middle of this woman talking, I just screamed. And then all the kids screamed. The woman who's my head is looking at me like, what is wrong with you? This is the one thing you didn't have to do. And even now, if I see a picture of a snake or just even think about a snake.
I have a deep fear of sharks. Now, I have no idea if it's because my mom saw Jaws, but... I think some of it's because I'm fascinated with them. That was that sort of nature-y kind of kid. And we went to the beach this summer in the States where you swim in the ocean because it's actually not cold water like it is here in Britain. It's not really a rational fear. There are more lightning attacks or whatever, what do they call it, lightning strikes than there are shark attacks. I was like, sharks do live in the ocean where you're swimming. And this summer, there's been a preponderance of shark attacks. And so I've been following it closely. But I think some of it is if I was talking to my psychoanalyst or whatever. I think I experience the fear of sharks when I'm swimming in the Hampstead Heath ponds as well.
Mm-hmm. But that's very unlikely.
But there could be.
Yes.
Or Lake Michigan, where I used to live in Chicago.
It depends if you use a euphemism, because some of them men I would call sharks.
Oh, and they could be taking a dip. That's what you're really scared of.
I'm scared of the sharks in the Hampstead ponds. Me too, babe.
It's a very sensible
fear.
fear.
That is hilarious. You are funny. That's the opposite of Christian humor. That is so funny. But I think it's, for me, the fear is about just knowing that there's something underneath and not being able to see it. Shut up. You are so dirty.
You can see Suzie in the upcoming Maria on Netflix alongside the one and only Angelina Jolie.
Spill the Spirituality is always on, so make sure you subscribe to get your fix every week. Invite a friend to listen and journey with you wherever you are. Coming soon, gluten-free enthusiast and youngest ever winner of the Great British Bake Off, Peter Sawkins, is with us about the return of the beloved show for another year. And we'll be with the stars at the Cheltenham Literature Festival. Oh, so excited.
It is. Hope and Anchor is a project of the Methodist Church in Britain. It's produced by John Ryan and Rachel Matthews. And I'm Jazz Ampalfar.
And I'm Trey Hall. Until next time, peace.